Zane Michaels had survived shootouts, betrayals, and car bombs, but nothing prepared him for the sight of an orphan girl coaching his disabled son through walking drills in his front courtyard. In broad daylight, unprotected, smiling, and doing something no therapist had achieved in months. Unauthorized juvenile detected, front courtyard. The security alert hit his phone at 2:47 p.m. Zane's world went silent. In the Mafia, unexpected visitors near your child meant one thing, a message written in blood. He killed the engine 2 blocks out. Hand on his Glock, pulse hammering against his ribs. His 4-year-old son, Jesse, legs destroyed by a car bomb meant for Zane 18 months ago, was supposed to be locked inside the fortress with Maria. Not outside, not exposed, not with a stranger. Zane approached on foot, using the palm trees for cover. Through the wrought iron gate, he saw his courtyard fountain. And standing near the water, visible to rival families, to snipers, to anyone who wanted revenge, was Jesse. With a girl. A young black girl in oversized, threadbare clothes knelt beside his son on the stone patio. Jesse balanced on child-sized crutches, metal leg braces catching the afternoon sun like targets. But it was what she was doing that made Zane's breath stop. She was teaching Jesse to walk. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I'd love to know who's in this story circle with us. Jesse's small face twisted with concentration. The girl's hands hovered near his waist. Protective, precise, professional. That's it, Jesse. 3 more steps. You're so strong. Jesse shifted his weight, moved one crutch forward, dragged his braced leg. 1 step. His eyes squeezed shut with effort. Another step, and another. 4 steps total, more than he'd managed in 6 months. I did it! Jesse's voice cracked with pure joy. Sharon, I did 4 steps. The girl, Sharon, clapped like he'd just won the Olympics. Yes, I knew you could! You're getting stronger every single day. Zane felt his world fracture. Rage exploded first. An unknown child had breached his security, brought his vulnerable son outside where enemies could strike, touched Jesse without permission, without authorization, But then confusion crashed over the anger. Because Jesse was smiling. Actually smiling. Moving with confidence Zane hadn't seen since before the bombing. Laughing with a stranger while his own father had been too consumed with vengeance to notice his son was improving. Jealousy twisted like a knife between his ribs. But one detail disturbed him more than everything else. A blue towel lay ready on the stones, positioned exactly where a professional therapist would place it for fall safety. The girl's stance, her hand positioning, the calculated distance between crutches. This wasn't luck. This was training. How could an orphan in worn-through clothes know advanced physiotherapy techniques? Zane pushed through the gate. Maria rushed from the side entrance, terror flooding her face. Mr. Michaels, please, I can explain. Who is she? Sharon Jackson, from the orphanage downtown. She's been helping Jesse for 3 weeks. You brought a stranger here? Exposed my son outside where anyone could? When was the last time you actually saw him smile? The words detonated in his chest. Maria was right. When had he last been present? When had he done more than kiss Jesse goodnight before disappearing into his office to plan retaliations? Guilt crashed over fury. But beneath both emotions, one question dominated everything. Who is this child, and what does she really want? In Zane's world, nobody risked everything for nothing. Sharon Jackson had just become his #1 target. 20 minutes later, Sharon sat on the edge of a leather chair in Zane's living room, hands folded in her lap, trying not to shake. She failed. Maria stood against the wall, face pale, wringing her apron like it might save her life. It wouldn't. Zane circled the room slowly, predator assessing prey. He'd sent Jesse upstairs with one of his guards, a man who carried a gun and didn't smile. The silence in the room felt like broken glass. "Let's try this again." Zane's voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. "Who are you working for?" Sharon's throat went dry. Nobody, sir. Nobody just happens to know professional physiotherapy." He stopped in front of her, arms crossed. "Nobody just happens to breach my security and put their hands on my son. So I'll ask one more time. Who sent you?" "Mr. Michaels, please." Maria started. "Shut up!" He didn't even look at her. "You brought this problem into my house. You'll speak when I tell you to speak." Sharon's hands clenched into fists. Fear battled something else inside her, something that had kept her alive in the orphanage, where bigger kids stole food and adults looked away. Defiance. "Nobody sent me," she said, voice steadier now. "I'm just an orphan Maria brings on cleaning days. I help fold laundry, dust shelves. That's it." "Then explain what I saw in my courtyard." "I saw Jesse struggling." Sharon met his eyes, even though every instinct screamed to look away. "I saw him crying because he couldn't walk like other kids. I knew I could help him." Zane laughed, cold, empty. "You knew you could help. A 12-year-old orphan. Where'd you get your medical degree? Street corners?" The insult stung, but Sharon held her ground. "I learned because I had to." "Had to?" 3 years ago, I was in a car accident." Her voice dropped. "My parents died. I was in the ICU for 2 months with spinal trauma. The doctor said I'd never walk right again, maybe never walk at all." Zane's eyes narrowed, calculating, searching for the lie. "But I did walk," Sharon continued, "because I taught myself. I stole medical books from library donations. I watched YouTube videos on the orphanage computer. I practiced every single day until I could stand without help. Until I could run." "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe." The words came out sharper than she intended. "But Jesse deserves better than giving up. He deserves someone who believes the impossible is possible." The room went dead silent. Maria's eyes widened in horror. Nobody talked to Zane Michaels like that. Nobody. Zane leaned down until his face was inches from Sharon's. She could smell expensive cologne and something underneath it. Gunpowder, maybe. Death, definitely. "Let me be very clear," he whispered. "I don't believe in miracles. I don't believe in charity. And I sure as hell don't believe in orphans who play doctor with other people's children." Sharon's jaw tightened. "Then you don't believe in your son." Zane's hand shot out, not to hit, but to grip the armrest beside her head. The leather creaked under his fingers. "Get out of my house," he said softly. "And if I ever see you near Jesse again, we'll have a very different conversation." But as Maria ushered Sharon toward the door, Zane was already reaching for his phone. Because in his world, nobody was just an orphan, and Sharon Jackson was about to be investigated like a crime scene. Zane made 3 calls before Sharon and Maria even reached the driveway. The first went to Tommy Numbers Corsetti, a hacker who could pull anyone's life story from the digital graveyard in under an hour. The second went to Detective Ray Bowman, a cop Zane owned who had access to sealed juvenile records. The third went to Vincent, his most trusted enforcer, with simple instructions. "Follow the girl. Don't let her see you. I want to know everywhere she goes." By 9 p.m., Zane's desk was covered in files. He poured 2 fingers of scotch and started reading. Sharon Marie Jackson. Age 12. Date of birth. March 14th. Born in County General to Marcus and Diane Jackson. Father worked construction. Mother was a nursing assistant at a pediatric clinic. Normal family, normal life, until 3 years ago. Zane flipped to the accident report, and something cold settled in his chest. Date, June 8th. Time, 11:47 p.m. Location, Highway 101, northbound. Marcus Jackson had been driving home from a double shift. Diane sat beside him. Sharon was asleep in the back seat. A semi-truck driver, awake for 19 hours straight, crossed the center line going 70 miles per hour. Marcus died on impact. Diane died in the ambulance. Sharon was extracted from the wreckage after 40 minutes. The medical reports made Zane's jaw tighten. Spinal trauma. Fractured vertebrae L3 to L5. Severe nerve damage. Prognosis: permanent mobility impairment. Patient may never achieve normal gait. But there was a note dated 8 months later, written by a Dr. Patricia Chen. Patient has made remarkable, unprecedented progress through self-directed rehabilitation. Against all statistical probability, Sharon has regained 90% mobility. Outcome unexplainable by current medical intervention. Zane leaned back in his chair, scotch forgotten. She wasn't lying. Tommy's digital deep dive came next. Bank records for the Jacksons showed nothing unusual. No offshore accounts, no suspicious deposits. Marcus and Diane had been living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in medical bills even before the accident. After their deaths, Sharon became a ward of the state, placed at Mercy Hills State Orphanage, a facility with a 2-star rating and 18 health code violations in the past 3 years. No living relatives, no trust fund, no mysterious benefactors. Detective Bowman's report was even more thorough. He'd pulled Sharon's school records, social services files, and behavioral assessments. Academic performance: exceptional, especially in science. Behavioral notes: withdrawn but not problematic. Keeps to herself, spends lunch periods in the library. Disciplinary record: none. There was one interesting note from a social worker dated 6 months ago. Sharon has been observed helping younger children with physical disabilities at the orphanage. Staff reports she demonstrates unusual knowledge of therapeutic techniques. Recommend evaluation for accelerated science track if funding becomes available. Zane's phone buzzed. Vincent. Boss, the girl went straight back to the orphanage. No stops, no calls. She's in her room now, shared with 3 other kids. Building's a dump. You want me to keep eyes on her? Yeah, Zane said quietly. Stay on her. He hung up and stared at the files spread across his desk. No red flags, no connections to rival families, no hidden agenda. Just a kid who'd survived the impossible and learned to heal herself in the process. Zane drained his scotch in one swallow. He'd spent 20 years trusting no one, believing everyone had an angle, seeing threats in every shadow. But Sharon Jackson's file showed something he hadn't expected. The truth. And somehow, that disturbed him even more. 2 days after the interrogation, Zane installed micro cameras in Jesse's playroom. State-of-the-art, motion-activated, completely hidden. He told himself it was for security. He knew it was a lie. Maria had begged him to let Sharon come back. Jesse keeps asking for her, she'd said quietly. He cried himself to sleep last night. Zane had agreed, but only because he needed to understand what game this girl was playing. The first recording started Thursday afternoon at 3:15 p.m. Zane watched from his office as Sharon entered the playroom, backpack slung over one shoulder. Jesse's face exploded with joy. He tried to stand too fast from his wheelchair and nearly fell. Sharon caught him gently. Easy, warrior, she said, smiling. We've got all afternoon. For the next hour, Zane watched something he couldn't explain. Sharon didn't just do exercises with Jesse. She turned them into games. She used stuffed animals as balance tools, built obstacle courses from cushions, made Jesse laugh while his muscles screamed with effort. And she took notes. A ratty spiral notebook, cover torn, pages water-stained, sat open beside her. Between exercises, Sharon scribbled observations in careful handwriting. Zane zoomed in on the feed. Jesse's right leg showed 15% more flexion today. Left ankle still rigid. Try new stretching technique tomorrow. Remember, heating pad first, then movement. This wasn't guessing. This was documentation. Clinical observation. She stayed 2 hours past when Maria usually drove her back to the orphanage. Unpaid. No one asked her to. When Jesse started crying from muscle pain, Sharon didn't call for help. She just held his hand and sang something soft in a language Zane didn't recognize. Jesse fell asleep in her lap. Sharon sat there for another 20 minutes, just holding him, before carefully moving him back to his wheelchair. Zane's jaw clenched. He turned off the monitor. But Vincent's report came that same evening, and Zane couldn't look away. The PI had followed Sharon back to Mercy Hill's orphanage and kept filming. What he captured made Zane's chest tighten. In a basement room with cracked concrete walls and exposed pipes, Sharon ran a clinic. 5 children with disabilities, cerebral palsy, clubfoot, muscular dystrophy, sat waiting for her. The equipment was improvised. Parallel bars made from plumbing pipes, therapy balls that were just old basketballs, resistance bands cut from bicycle inner tubes. But Sharon worked with each child like they were the only person in the world. She guided a 6-year-old girl with leg braces through walking exercises, the same patience she showed Jesse. She stretched a boy's contracted muscles while explaining what she was doing in terms he could understand. She celebrated every tiny victory like it was a miracle. And it was all free. The orphanage staff didn't even know she was doing it. Sharon had claimed the abandoned basement room on her own, scavenged donations, built everything herself. Vincent's voice came through on the recording. "Boss, she does this every night. 2 hours, sometimes 3. No one pays her. No one even thanks her." Zane watched the footage 3 times. Each time the same question haunted him. Who was this child? And why did watching her make him feel like he'd spent 20 years being the wrong kind of man? Dr. Elizabeth Reeves arrived at Zane's mansion on Tuesday at precisely 4 p.m., exactly as instructed. She was one of the top pediatric neurologists in the country. Zane paid her $15,000 per consultation. She'd been treating Jesse since the bombing, and her prognosis had been clear. Jesse would walk eventually, but progress would be slow, painful, and limited. "Just observe," Zane had told her on the phone. "Don't announce yourself. I need your professional opinion on something." Dr. Reeves didn't ask questions. People who worked for Zane Michaels knew better. He led her to a viewing room adjacent to Jesse's playroom, one-way glass that Sharon didn't know existed. They arrived just as Sharon was setting up for the afternoon session. "That's the girl?" Dr. Reeves asked. "That's her." They watched in silence. Sharon guided Jesse through a warm-up routine, her hands precise and gentle. She checked his range of motion methodically. Left ankle, right knee, hip flexors. Then she transitioned into active exercises, using toys and games to mask the therapeutic work. Dr. Reeves leaned forward, frowning. "What is it?" Zane asked. That's a modified Bobeth approach, combined with proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation." She glanced at Zane. "Where did she train?" "She didn't. That's impossible. Those techniques require... Just watch." 15 minutes later, Dr. Reeves wasn't frowning anymore. She was staring, mouth slightly open, as Sharon helped Jesse through a complex series of movements that addressed his specific nerve damage patterns. "I want to meet her," Dr. Reeves said suddenly. "That's why you're here." They entered the playroom together. Sharon looked up, startled, then immediately recognized the doctor from previous visits. "Dr. Reeves," Sharon said quietly, standing. "I should go—" "No, please." Dr. Reeves raised a hand, her voice gentle but firm. "I've been watching you work. Your techniques are remarkably advanced. Where did you study?" Sharon's eyes darted to Zane, then back. "I didn't study anywhere, ma'am." "Then where did you learn?" Sharon hesitated. "I borrowed medical textbooks from library donations at the orphanage. When I was recovering from my accident, I needed to understand what was happening to my body. So I taught myself." Dr. Reeves blinked. You taught yourself neuromuscular rehabilitation from textbooks? And videos, and journals I found online. Sharon's voice grew quieter. I know I'm not a real doctor. I know I shouldn't be. How old are you? 12. Dr. Reeves turned to Zane, and he saw something in her expression he'd never seen before. Genuine awe. Mr. Michaels, may I speak with you privately? They stepped into the hallway. Dr. Reeves didn't waste time. That child has a gift, she said bluntly. A natural understanding of therapeutic biomechanics I've seen in maybe 2 students in my entire career, and I teach at Stanford Medical School. Zane's jaw tightened. You're serious? Completely. Jessie's progress over the past few weeks, that's her work. She's doing things I would have recommended, but better. More creative, more intuitive. Dr. Reeves paused. If that girl had resources, proper training, mentorship, she could revolutionize pediatric rehabilitation. Zane stared through the doorway at Sharon, who was now sitting on the floor with Jessie, both of them laughing. His entire worldview was cracking, and he didn't know how to stop it. Mercy Hill's state orphanage looked exactly like its inspection reports suggested. A building slowly dying from neglect. Zane pulled up in an unmarked sedan. No driver, no guards. He'd called ahead, introduced himself as Michael Zane, a local businessman considering a charitable donation. The director had practically tripped over herself scheduling an immediate tour. We're so grateful for community interest, Mrs. Patterson gushed, leading him through hallways that smelled like industrial cleaner trying to mask something worse. Our children desperately need support. Zane nodded, half listening, scanning every corner. He wasn't here for the tour. And this is our recreational wing. Mrs. Patterson gestured to a room with donated toys from the 1990s. What's down there? Zane pointed to a stairwell marked with peeling paint. Oh, that's just the old basement. Storage, mostly. We don't really use... I'd like to see it. Mrs. Patterson's smile faltered. I assure you, there's nothing. I'm considering a substantial donation, Zane said smoothly. I want to see everything. She relented. The basement stairs creaked under his weight. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the air grew colder with each step. At the bottom, Zane heard something that made him stop. Children's laughter. He followed the sound to a room at the end of the corridor. The door was propped open with a brick. Inside, Zane saw exactly what Vincent's footage had shown. Cracked concrete walls, exposed pipes, improvised equipment. And Sharon. She knelt beside 5 children, each with visible disabilities, leg braces, wheelchairs, twisted limbs that spoke of cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, conditions Zane recognized now from months of research into Jessie's condition. Okay, Marcus, Sharon said gently to a small boy, maybe 7, with severe CP. Today's the day. I know you can do it. The boy looked terrified and determined in equal measure. Sharon positioned herself beside him, hands ready but not touching. Remember what we practiced. Your brain knows how. Your body just needs to remember. Marcus gripped the plumbing pipe parallel bars. His whole body shook with effort. 1 step. The other children went silent, watching. Another step. Marcus's face twisted with concentration. Sweat beaded on his forehead. A 3rd step. The room exploded. 5 children screamed with joy. Sharon grabbed Marcus in a hug, both of them crying. Kids in wheelchairs clapped until their hands hurt. A girl with leg braces stood up, struggling, fighting, just to cheer louder. You did it! Sharon shouted, laughing through tears. Marcus, you did it! Zane stood in the doorway, completely unseen, watching something his money had never bought. These children had nothing. No parents, no resources, no hope by any reasonable measure. But in this forgotten basement, with a 12-year-old girl who'd taught herself medicine from stolen books, they had something he'd spent millions trying to find. They had each other. They had someone who believed in them. They had hope. Mrs. Patterson appeared beside him, startled. "I didn't know the children were. Sharon really shouldn't be." "How much?" Zane interrupted. "Excuse me? How much does this place need to stop falling apart?" Mrs. Patterson blinked. "Well, our annual budget shortfall is approximately—" "I'll write you a check before I leave," Zane said quietly, still watching Sharon celebrate with children society had forgotten. For the first time in 20 years, he understood what power actually meant. And he'd been using it wrong his entire life. Sharon knew she was being fired the moment Maria told her Mr. Michaels wanted to see her in his study. "It's okay," Sharon said quietly, already gathering her ratty notebook. "I understand." Maria's eyes were red. "Sharon, I'm so sorry. I should never have—" "It's not your fault." But her hands shook as she walked down the marble hallway to Zane's study. The door was already open. He sat behind a massive desk, surrounded by leather-bound books that probably cost more than her entire orphanage. "Sit," he said. Sharon sat on the edge of a chair that could have swallowed her whole. She kept her chin up. She wouldn't cry. Not in front of him. Zane studied her for a long moment. Then he slid a folder across the desk. "This is a contract," he said. "You'll work with Jesse officially, 3 times a week to start. I'll pay you $500 per session. I'll also cover whatever education you need. Courses, certifications, eventually medical school if that's what you want." Sharon stared at the folder like it might bite her. "I'll set up a trust fund," Zane continued. "You'll never have to worry about money again. You'll have the best mentors, the best schools, everything you need to become the doctor you want to be." Silence filled the room. Sharon's hands clenched in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "No." Zane blinked. "Excuse me?" "No." Louder now. Sharon stood up, and something fierce burned in her eyes. "I don't want your deal." "You don't—" Zane leaned forward, genuinely confused. "Sharon, this is a life-changing opportunity. You'd be set for—" "You think everything's for sale," she said quietly. The words cut like glass. "You think you can just throw money at problems and they disappear. You think people do things because of what they'll get in return." Zane's jaw tightened. "That's how the world works." "Not my world." Sharon's voice cracked, but she held his gaze. "I don't help Jesse because I want something from you. I don't help those kids at the orphanage because someone's paying me. I do it because nobody did it for me when I needed it." The air in the room went thin. "When I was in that hospital bed, screaming because my back hurt so bad I wanted to die, you know what the doctors told me?" Tears streamed down Sharon's face now, but her voice stayed steady. "They said I'd never be normal, that I should accept my limitations, that some things can't be fixed." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But I didn't accept it. I fought every single day, not because someone paid me, not because I'd get something out of it, but because I refused to give up on myself. And I won't give up on Jesse either. Not for your money, not for anything." Sharon turned toward the door. "So keep your guilt money, Mr. Michaels. I'll help Jesse because he deserves someone who believes in him, not someone who treats him like a transaction." She walked out. And Zane sat alone in his study, surrounded by wealth that suddenly felt worthless. For the first time in decades, he felt ashamed. 3 days after Sharon refused his offer, Zane sat alone in his office at 11 p.m., staring at monitors he couldn't seem to turn off. He told himself he was checking security footage. He knew he was checking on her. Sharon had kept coming. No contract, no payment, just showing up twice a week like nothing had happened. Maria drove her. Jesse lit up every time she walked through the door. And Zane watched. Always watching. Tonight's session had run late. Sharon was still in the playroom, working through Jesse's evening stretches. The ones that hurt most. The ones that made his son cry. Zane had walked past that room 100 times, always finding an excuse not to go in. Coward. On the monitor, Sharon guided Jesse through a hip flexor stretch. Even through the camera, Zane could see Jesse's face contort with pain. But Sharon held him gently, murmuring encouragement. Then something changed. Sharon's hands slowed. Stopped. She sat back on her heels, and her shoulders began to shake. She was crying. Jesse, still on the therapy mat, propped himself up on his elbows. "Sharon, you okay?" Sharon wiped her face quickly, but the tears kept coming. She looked at Jesse, and her voice broke. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Jesse." "Sorry for what?" "I can't do more." Sharon's voice cracked completely. "You need real doctors, real equipment, real physical therapy clinics with machines and specialists who actually know what they're doing. I'm just a kid. I don't have degrees or certifications or anything. I'm just—" She covered her face with her hands, shoulders heaving. Jesse sat up carefully, movement that would have been impossible 3 months ago, and reached for her. His small hand patted her cheek clumsily, the way children do when they don't understand adult pain but want to fix it anyway. "Sharon?" Jesse said seriously, his 4-year-old voice filled with absolute certainty. "You're my best doctor." Sharon looked at him, tears streaming. "You make my legs work," Jesse continued, "and you make me laugh. Real doctors don't do that. They just hurt me and tell Daddy I'm broken." He patted her face again. "But you say I'm strong. You say I'm a warrior, and I believe you." Sharon pulled Jesse into a hug, both of them crying now, and something inside Zane's chest cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like something frozen was finally thawing. He'd spent 20 years building walls, trusting no one, believing everyone had an angle, seeing the world through a lens of transactions and threats and power dynamics. But this 12-year-old girl had no angle. She had no ulterior motive. She was just good. Purely, impossibly, inconveniently good. And his son, the child Zane had failed through guilt and distance and cowardice, trusted her more than he trusted his own father. Zane reached for the monitor, turned it off, sat in darkness, and for the first time since the bombing that destroyed Jesse's legs and Zane's soul, he let himself feel something other than rage. It felt like grief. It felt like hope. It felt like the beginning of something he didn't have words for yet. Redemption, maybe. If he could figure out what that even meant. Zane came downstairs at 6 a.m. to find Sharon sitting at his kitchen island, backpack already on, hands folded like she was waiting for sentencing. Maria hovered near the coffee maker, looking worried. "Mr. Michaels," Sharon started, voice small, "I need to apologize. Last night I overstepped. I shouldn't have—" Sharon dash. "I know you hired real doctors. I know I'm not qualified. I just got emotional and I shouldn't have broken down in front of Jesse and—" "Sharon, stop!" She looked up at him, eyes red from crying. Zane opened his mouth to say something. What, he didn't know, when a sound made them both freeze. Footsteps. Small, uneven, shuffling footsteps coming from the hallway. Sharon's head snapped toward the doorway. Maria gasped, hand flying to her mouth. And then Jesse appeared. No wheelchair, no crutches, no leg braces, just Jesse. Walking. His legs shook with effort, his arms stretched out for balance. Every step looked like it might be his last. But he was moving forward, independently, alone. "Daddy," Jesse said, grinning through the effort. "Look." Zane couldn't breathe. Jesse took another step, then another. His small face scrunched with concentration, but determination burned in his eyes. The same determination Zane had built an empire on, the same fire Sharon showed every time someone told her something was impossible. 1 step, 2, 3. Sharon stood frozen, hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming silently. 4 steps. 5. 6. Zane dropped to his knees without thinking, arms out, waiting. 7, 8, 9. Jesse's legs wobbled. He almost fell, but he pushed through, tiny jaw set, refusing to quit. 10 steps. He collapsed into Zane's arms. The world stopped. Zane caught his son and pulled him close, feeling Jesse's heart hammering against his chest, feeling 4 years of pain and guilt and distance crash over him like a wave. His hands shook as he held Jesse tighter. "I did it, Daddy," Jesse whispered against his shoulder. "Sharon said I could, and I did." Something broke in Zane's chest. Not cracked this time. Shattered. He buried his face in his son's hair and cried, real tears, the kind he hadn't shed since he was a child himself, the kind he'd trained himself never to show because men in his world didn't cry, didn't break, didn't feel. But he felt everything now. Every moment he'd missed, every night he'd chosen revenge over his son, every time Jesse had needed him and found only absence. "I'm sorry," Zane choked out, holding Jesse like he might disappear. "I'm so sorry. I should have been here. I should have believed in you." Jesse patted his father's face, confused but gentle. "It's okay, Daddy. Sharon believed enough for both of us." Zane looked up through tears at Sharon, who stood across the kitchen sobbing silently, backpack still on, looking like she wanted to run but couldn't move. And for the first time in his life, Zane understood what real power looked like. It looked like a 12-year-old orphan who refused to give up. It looked like hope. It looked like everything he'd spent 20 years trying to destroy. 6 months after Jesse took his first steps, Zane Michaels signed 2 documents that changed everything. The first was a guardianship agreement, making Sharon Jackson legally his. The second was incorporation papers for the Sharon Jackson Foundation, the first legitimate business venture he'd launched in 20 years. Sharon fought him on both. "I don't need saving," she'd said in his study, arms crossed. "I know," Zane had replied quietly, "but I do." She'd stared at him for a long moment, then signed. Now Sharon attended Westbridge Academy, the same private school that had waitlisted Jesse for kindergarten. She demolished every science course they threw at her. Teachers called Zane monthly, asking if Sharon could skip grades. He always asked Sharon first. She always said no. "I want to learn it right," she'd tell him. "Not fast. Right." Zane started attending Jesse's physical therapy appointments, started coming home for dinner, started being present. His criminal empire didn't collapse. He just stopped letting it consume him. 2 years later, Zane stood in the audience of Jesse's kindergarten graduation, watching his son walk across the stage without assistance. No braces, no crutches. Just Jesse, steady and strong, accepting his diploma with a grin that could light cities. Sharon sat beside Zane, now 14, wearing a dress Maria had picked out for the occasion. She clapped until her hands hurt, tears streaming down her face. "You did that," Zane whispered. "We did that," Sharon corrected. 3 weeks later, the Sharon Jackson Pediatric Institute opened its doors. State-of-the-art facility, 20,000 square feet, equipment that made Dr. Reeves cry when she saw it, scholarships for disabled children from underserved communities, free clinic twice a week. Sharon had refused to let Zane name it after her. He'd done it anyway. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Zane stepped to the microphone. 100 people stared back. Doctors, donors, families, media. He'd given speeches before, threats disguised as business proposals, warnings wrapped in handshakes. This was different. "I spent my life taking from people," Zane said, voice steady. "Building power through fear, through control, through violence. I believed that's what strength looked like." He glanced at Sharon, standing in the front row beside Jesse. "Then I met a 12-year-old orphan who had nothing. No parents, no money, no reason to help my son. But she did it anyway. Not because I paid her. Not because she wanted something from me. But because she refused to let my son believe he was broken. Zane's voice caught. He didn't hide it. This child taught me that the only power that matters is the power to heal, to build, to believe in people when they've stopped believing in themselves. He looked directly at Sharon. She saved my son's life, and she saved mine. The crowd erupted, but Zane only saw Sharon, tears streaming down her face, mouthing 2 words. Thank you. After the ceremony, they stood together outside the institute, Zane, Sharon, and Jesse, watching the sun set over the building that would help thousands of children. Sharon leaned against Zane's side. Jesse held her hand. No longer an orphan, no longer alone, finally home.